The following broadcast is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network.
Golf Talk Live is sponsored by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. Here's Andrew to tell you more about our sponsors.
iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, including reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top teaching professionals, all designed to help you improve from tee to green. Welcome to Golf Talk Live with your host, Ted Odorico. Join Ted each week as he speaks with some of the best in golf. This week's special guest will join us a bit later. But first up is another great discussion on Coach's Corner. So let's introduce tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Season 13 of Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico. I've got a great show for you tonight. I've got a very good friend of mine joining me on the Coach's Corner panel tonight, Pete Buchanan. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Pete here in just a moment. But later on, of course, I'm going to be joined by my featured guest, Lisa O'Hurley, who is the founder and CEO of LOHLA Sport. She'll be joining me on the second half. For those of you tuning in for the first time, if you want to see any of the broadcasts here of Golf Talk Live, the video version, you can go to the YouTube channel for iGolf Sports. That's iGolf Sports, and it's youtube.com/@iGolf Sports. And all of the episodes that have been recorded this season are all there. And you can also find it on Spotify.com as well. If you're someone that enjoys maybe just listening to the audio version, if you go to Spreaker.com, all of the episodes from this season and the previous 12 years, because this is season 13, as I mentioned, you can find them all on Spreaker.com or really wherever you listen to podcasts. But they've all been housed there on Spreaker.com, so check that out as well if you don't have time to watch the video. If you want to catch the audio version of all the broadcasts, you'll have 12 seasons to catch up on it. So I'm going to bring on my guest here on the Coach's Corner panel, tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll get into tonight's discussion. Of course, as I mentioned, his name is Pete Buchanan, and he's been on the show many, many times. He's teaching golf now for over 30-plus years. He's the founder and director of instruction for Plain Simple Golf, and of course, Plain Simple Golf houses the Plain Simple Golf Circuit and the Simple Swing Repeater Training Brace. And Pete has been helping golfers literally around the globe focus on building a repeatable swing. And he is, of course, among the favorites here on the Coach's Corner panel. So, Pete, welcome back to Coach's Corner. Good to have you.
Thanks, Ted. It's good to be here. It's always fun to be on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And let me just say before we start, Clint Wright was going to join us tonight, but he was running into some technical issues. So I think he's going to come on next week. So he'll make up in that extra slot for next week. But Pete, I think you and I can hold the fort. We've done it a number of times over the years, so I really appreciate you coming on. So I'm going to start out. This is going to be a hitting right below the belt, no pun intended, but size does matter, or does it? And no pun intended, as I said. And for those of you that are tuning into the broadcast, don't let your mind go into the gutter here. What I'm talking about here, of course, Pete, I'm just having a little fun, is do taller players have an advantage over shorter players? Like I'm 6'4" as an example. Some of the players out on tour, both past and present, are a little bit shorter. Does the size really make a difference on some things or everything? Does it really make much of a difference? And if so, what are some of the advantages that taller players might have?
Yeah, well, again, thanks, Ted, for having me on. It can work to advantage, could work to a disadvantage. It really depends on the level of the player. Typically, taller players have a longer, wider arc, so they have the capacity for more speed and more distance. So in that regard, if they're able to control that and get more distance, then they have an advantage because they can hit it longer. But then when you get down to some of the shorter shots around the green, I'm not going to say the less tall players, I don't want to call them shorter, they have a little bit of advantage because, they're closer to the ground, and those short shots are a little bit easier to play when you're closer to the ground. So I would say it can be a big advantage. Distance does come into it. But again, there's some smaller players that can really, really belt it out there. So I think in these days, in these times, with technology, with workouts, with being able to use, the technology we have with 3D and being able to take a swing, break it down, get some workouts to enhance it, I think probably the height isn't as big of an advantage as it was before. But I think, I can remember back in the day, guys like Andy Bean and who's the other one? George
Knudsen.
George Knudsen. And some of those guys, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", and they could really knock it out there. Back with the old wooden heads and the blot of balls, height was an advantage with that big arc. But as I said, players are stronger, they're smarter, they work out better, they're physically built differently, and so I think it's probably narrowed the gap a little bit. But I would say, a taller player can create some more speed, but then again, as we all know, in the end, you got to get the ball in the hole. So I would think, it's probably leveled off more in the last 8 years than it has in the previous time.
Yeah, so some great points. And the reason why I bring that up and, is because, years ago when you looked at a lot of taller players, you used to see more of an upright swing. And for the shorter players, it tended to be a little bit a flatter plane, if you will. But you're not seeing that really the same now. Even taller players, you're not seeing a more upright swing necessarily because they're all pretty much swinging on the same plane now because the swing has changed. Now you don't have that reverse C like you used to have, somebody like a Johnny Miller and some of the other ones. And Nicholas famously it was as well. And yeah, I agree with you. I think the taller players, again, I'm 6'4", so typically if you are creating a nice wide arc, you can potentially generate a lot of club head speed and get you a little bit more distance. But with workouts and that sort of thing going on today, and that brings me to the next one. Shorter players, you mentioned a few things. Really, they have a number of ways that they can work to reduce some of the deficiencies that they might have competing against a taller player. Working out, number one, building a little more strength, core strength, and things like that. And also, again, being a little bit, their center of gravity a little lower to the ground, again, typically allows them to be a little bit more proficient in things like the short game. Tom Kite comes to mind, even Ben Crenshaw, and these are, of course, some older players that we're talking about now. But is there anything else really from a player that's tall deficient? Let's say, well, let's do that. That sounds better than shorter. That can really capitalize on that. What are some things that you've seen? I mean, you see a whole mix of players. Somebody that's not a tall player, what are some of the other options for them, and how do they best capitalize and make use of their stature?
Well, the first thing I would do is make sure the short game is solid. That's definitely number one. They got to be able to pitch, chip, putt, hit bunker shots, around the green, inside of 50 yards. They need to be dynamite. Because there's going to be a few holes, depending on where they play, that they're going to need those because they're going to get longer irons into the greens and they may miss some. But the other side of the coin is, like we talk about with workouts. I've got one of the tour guys that I coach. He's 5'7", maybe 155 pounds, drives at 330. Wow. He's so strong, and watching him work out, and I've been to the workouts with his trainer, and everything we've done is geared toward making him mobile, stable, efficient, with speed. And so now we can pinpoint the swing down. And it was pretty cool because I got to go in with his trainer and we walked through the golf swing and all the parts of it. And I showed him what we're trying to do. And then he took those into the movements and said, okay, now we have to do this to enhance this piece, to get more stable here, to get more mobility here. And so it's really made a big difference in, getting some players that, don't have the height typically at the start, and now they can work out and generate lots of speed by getting more efficient in everything that they do and getting 100% out of every movement that they make.
It's funny too because when you look at a lot of the players that aren't as tall, they're not taking great big back swings. We used to see players 20, 30 years ago would have a huge arc. Tom Weiskopf comes to mind. I mean, that club would go quite a ways up. And, now it's a more compact, but it's a very powerful swing. So they're still able, like you pointed out with your player, still able to hit it well over 300 yards off the tee, but maybe less than 6 feet tall. So, the players that aren't as tall can still do ways, whether it be working out. And I agree with you too. I think, Pete, I think that you have to really focus and really tighten up the short game because, I mean, again, whether you're hitting it 250 or 300 or 300 plus, if you're not keeping the ball in play, number one, and if you're not able to recover, it doesn't really matter how far you hit the ball. I mean, 300 yards straight is pretty good, but if it's 300 yards and it's hooking in or slicing into the woods or hooking in some other trouble, that 300 yards doesn't really mean a lot. So I would rather have a player that is hitting it straight down the middle of the fairway, or certainly thereabouts, even if they're only 225 to 240. Like many of our older players are faced with, some of them not even hitting it that far now. But I would much rather be in a position like that. Here's something I want to get you to talk a little bit about. A lot of players, we see them trying to manipulate the club face in order to make better contact. And, they'll do all kinds of things. What role does the hands play? I mean, obviously we know the hands are gripping the club, but what role specifically do they play in helping to square the club face? And just so that people understand that, because, there's a lot of factors that go into that. Obviously rotation that can help, coming into impact at the right time, but the hands themselves play a specific role. Talk about that as well.
Yeah, they definitely do. To be extremely proficient, I mean, you're going to have a combination of how the forearms move in connection with the wrist angles and the shaft. And the better we can keep them together, moving more, and for the better part of a term, as one unit, the more stable we can make the face. Now, when you have a swing that's not, close to the plane like it should be, now you're moving out, whether you're coming too far out or too far in. So now the hands have to change their position in order to get the club back to the ball to square it up. And so in some cases, if you've got somebody who's, pretty good hand-eye coordinated, they can do that. They can make the changes and make it work. And some that aren't, it's a little bit more difficult. They have a harder time getting the club face to square. And I've always said over time, you get somebody who's got a lot of hand-eye coordination, and that can only take them so far in scoring in golf. And then once they get to a certain point, now we have to start calming those hands down, because now they have to be more proficient in how they drive it, more proficient in how they hit it out of the fairway, and they have to be much more efficient around the green. And around the greens, the more your hands get involved, whether you're going one direction or the other, the harder those shots are to hit and control. And so I think to a certain degree, you have to look at, how is the club moving, first of all? And then from that point, how do we use the hands in their position with the forearms and the shaft in order to get the best benefit of what we're doing with the club face coming in? There's no question, not only the grip in its position can change the club face, but also the wrists and their angles with that grip can change how the club face looks. So I have been one that, I try to move the golf club as efficiently as possible with as little motion in the hands and the wrist as possible to keep the club face squared where the arms are always moving. That way we have more time to get other things done. But if you don't have that motion, and it goes back to what I was talking about before with mobility and stability, sometimes you don't have somebody who can move as easily as we need them to. So now we have to use the hands to help make up for some efficiencies maybe in some other places. We can still get great contact, but now we have to look at how do the hands move now based on where the club is coming into the ball, and how can we more control the club face based on that movement that we see.
Yeah, because and great points, by the way, because you used to see a lot of players, if you go back, 20, 30 years ago, particularly, you used to see a lot of players that were very handsy in their golf swing. You see, and they were in a sense kind of manipulating, because the way their swings were at that time, it was all about timing. If the timing was the slightest bit off, they were hitting all kinds of shots. So they had to really kind of force the hands or manipulate the hands in order to get it square. But now that the swing has really changed a lot, we've changed the way the players actually addressing the ball a little bit more. We're changing how the movement, as you said, the forearms and things. So everything's becoming a little bit more compact, a little bit more tight. So again, it's not just the hands. I mean, obviously you have to have your hands on gripped correctly on the club in order to. That's one aspect of it. But as you pointed out, some of the other highlights that you mentioned, it has to work in unison. And if one of those pieces get out, then you run into an issue where the club face doesn't come back to impact square, and then you're all over the place. So very interesting. And a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people, you see them, their swings off a little bit, and you'll see them trying to manipulate the hands because they know that I think one of the biggest things, and very quickly, and then I'll move on, we always talked about lag. And I think people misunderstood that and holding off the club. So they tried to force that, and then they get it to the point where the club face is so far behind them and their body's pretty much turned completely forward. And now they're trying to race the arms and the hands up to catch up with it. And it's just because they're out of sync. Their timing's off and myriad of other things. But so, yeah, I was just always curious. I think a lot of people misunderstood that. And, Nicholas often talk about how the feet also play a role in the swing as well, with transferring our weight. So talk about that a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just expand a little bit on that, because that was something that Nicholas always talked about, was how important to have good feet, good footwork, if you will, in the golf swing.
With as upright as his swing was, it was vastly important how his footwork moved to be able to keep his lower body underneath the upper body to keep him balanced. And so he had, the left heel came up, it went down. All of these things were to move his feet so that the legs and the hips would send and move to keep his upper body balanced as he went through it. Modern swings, the feet have quieted down a little bit, but there's still a lot of work that they do because there's a lot of pressure put on those lower legs and the feet when you go into the golf swing, especially now to create, more force into the golf ball. Ground force reaction, or whatever they want to call it today. You said great footwork, and now they call it ground force reaction. So it's really the same thing. Just change the terminology.
Right.
But yeah, Jack was brilliant at what he did, because if you really break down his swing down, you can just see how he moved his feet around, and everything just kept in balance all the way around in what he did. And so that's what you're seeing today. And I worked a lot on that today. And ironically enough, I get more motion out of the footwork by moving the upper body more efficiently over top of the lower body, and then the feet just sort of now in our natural balance move around to help them stay so that they don't lose anything. And I think number one today, posture is so important in golf. Not only where you start, but how you maintain it. The body angles are critical. They always talk about distance is mass times velocity squared. And the mass part is where the amateurs don't move it around as well. Their body motion doesn't move, so the mass is off, so the distance is off. And so the footwork is important because you got to have balance, and without moving your feet properly and keeping the legs in position, you're not going to have that balance. And you're trying to swing something 80, 90 miles an hour and your balance is off. Well, there's no wonder the ball goes all over the place. And so, yeah, footwork is crucial, and really understanding your own movements and how you move. Like you said, the modern swing is so much more rounded than it was before. The hands and arms are shorter. The club is more efficient. It's more square to the arms. And because of that, it's coming in with a lot more lower body motion, because the upper body is moving so much more dynamically into the golf ball that the lower half now has to turn more. And so the footwork is important, so that the feet move around to continue to balance what the rest of the body is doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, when you think about it, Nicklaus's swing at that time is something that we see a lot of older golfers trying to emulate. What I mean by that is, for right-handed golfers, that front foot, the left foot, has to come off the ground a little bit for them to get a full body turn, right? Because they just don't have the same flexibility in their hips or their upper body anymore. And the more modern swing, you certainly are transferring the weight, but you don't see a lot of the more modern players lifting that left heel up. Certainly not to the same degree that somebody like a Nicklaus or, as I mentioned earlier, Johnny Miller. So for the older players, they've now got to incorporate that into their golf swing, because they can't take it back as far as what they used to be able to do it. So footwork's very important, and again, it all comes into the timing as well, with your golf swing. And but Nicklaus, I always mention him because even though he's not playing in today's game, he had his vision of what needed to be done in order to be a good ball striker was so profound. And he looked at it from the standpoint, okay, what do I need to do to get myself around this golf course, and in order to keep the ball in play and to be able to do these things? And he looked at, okay, I know if I want to hit the ball far, I've got to get a bigger turn. The only way I can do that is to raise my left heel. So, he had a lot of great thoughts, and that's why I always refer to him a lot in some of our discussions. Time is become a big issue for many golfers, at present. And if you were going to work with somebody, which I know you do, that wants to still remain competitive, how can they best maximize their practice and playing time in order to be that? So in other words, time's an issue. People have got other commitments. Golf is not a number one priority. And it doesn't have to be somebody playing on tour. It might be just somebody that maybe wants to play, maybe a round or two a week and wants to be consistent. But their time is being eaten away with other things. Now, how do you find a balance and to be able to maximize both practice and playing time in order to be able to get out there and still be able to be competitive with whether it's with your buddies or whether it's on some other, tour or what have you?
The things I do with the players is, first of all, if they don't take stats when they play, I ask them to take stats when they play because I want to find out where the inefficiencies are. What is keeping you from being able to score like you should? And so those are the things we're going to have to spend the most time on.
All
and
right.
So if you have limited time, let's work on the things that are giving you the most trouble. And so I think that's where we can clean up some areas and begin to get you to score better by practicing those specific items. And I think the other thing, too, is you have to structure the practice relative to what you're trying to do. If you're playing multiple golf courses, then you're going to have some thought process to say, okay, well, this golf course requires this requires something else. So you're going to have to look at some of the types of shots you're trying to hit and then things you're trying to do. So you got to structure your practice relative to where and what you're going to play. But you also have to understand that the practice has to be rooted in probably about 60% short game or more. Simply because I know driving is a big piece of it. But, I've seen a lot of players hit wavering drives and still make a par. But I've seen a lot of players bomb one down the middle and make a triple. So, because the short game is not very good. And so if your short game is always good, well, it takes a lot of pressure off everything else. And so I think more than anything else, and I'm glad you brought this up because I have a junior that I've been working with for a number of years. And in his mind, he always wanted to win one of his high school matches, and he hadn't won one. And I said, look, put in the time and the wins will come. And so we've really gotten his game more efficient. And lo and behold, they've had 7 matches this spring, and he's won 6 of them.
Wow.
So, it's just one of those things where we specifically broke down what he was doing, and we went to the areas where he was struggling, and then we started to piece that together. And even though at the time he's like, well, I want to score better now, I said, hold on, let's get these things going. Let's get them going. And now, he's coming to me now. So, well, how do I shot 4 under? How do I shoot 8? So, it's a great conversation to have. And, and that one's an easy one. You got to make more putts. That was a simple answer. And he's like, oh, well, you have to make more putts. It's the only way you're going to shoot lower. So we've got to work at getting you closer to the hole, and then we got to get those conversions in there. But, yeah, I think you have to really look at the overall game. How much time do you have? What parts of the game are giving you the most troubles? And let's concentrate on those, get those up to speed. And then once those are up to speed, we can then fine-tune the practice toward something else to keep you more efficient overall.
Yeah, you have to really dissect everything to see where the areas are that are giving them the most difficulty. And patience comes into it a lot as well. A lot of just listening to you talk about your student, how many of them, especially the young kids, because they the young juniors and whatnot, they're very impatient. They want everything now, and they don't really fully. They're willing to put the work in once they understand what they have to do. But it's getting them to understand first that that's what they have to do in order to see improvement. And, tightening up putting, chipping, what have you, whatever the area is, can make the difference of, those 2, 3, 4 strokes that they want to increase. And, trying to reinvent the wheel every time is not going to do it. And that's what a lot of them end up doing is they say, oh, okay, well, if I could just hit it a little bit further, or if I could just hit it straighter, there's probably nothing wrong with how they're hitting the ball. It's just how are they getting out of difficult lies when they find themselves in trouble, which you're going to find more often than not. And how do you recover those shots? And that's what this brings me to, and I want to ask you, of course, a few weeks ago, of course, it's hard to believe now it's been a few weeks, but we had the Masters tournament, and many of us, of course, tuned into that. And that was a great win for Rory. But, if you really tune in, particularly on Sunday, you watch players like Rory and Bryson DeChambeau, certainly were under pressure during that tournament, which is understandable. What would you do if you were faced with a similar situation with a student to help them ease some of that pressure when it's under the gun? So, like, just taking your student you were just talking about, when they're in a tournament, of course, they're under pressure, they're under stress and things like that. What can you do as their coach to help ease some of that tension, or how can you guide them to be able to learn things, to be able to do that, to be able to ease that pressure when they feel it, mounting up and the tensions, building up?
Yeah. It goes back to what we talked about before. As long as they know where their inefficiencies are, we can use the golf course to their advantage, and we can maybe avoid some of those. A lot of times these young kids aren't good from 40, 50, 60 yards, and they get a short par four. What do? They drive it 40 yards from the green and make a double. So that's when these cases say, now hold on, let's hit a driving iron off the tee and hit a wedge in. I think you're going to be much better doing that. So we can really look at how they play, and tackle the golf course to make it work more toward their advantage. But I also always like to tell them, I said, look, golf is one shot at a time. That's it. All you have to do is take the concentration for one shot, and don't let any of the outside influences take away from what you're trying to do on this one. I've told you the story before where you have the guy on 18 and he's thinking, if I three-putt, I got to buy lunch for the 5th Saturday in a row. Well, of course he's going to three-putt, because that's all he's thinking about. The consequences are the thing that really deter players. They're thinking about the consequence of the failure instead of looking at, what am I trying to do here? And looking back and say, how many times have I done this? I've hit 1,000 of these. So this is no big deal. I got to pitch it over the bunker. I stood there 3 days ago and hit 100 of them over the bunker. This is not that big of a deal, and it's only one shot. And also for them to understand, if they have a hole that doesn't go their way, they're going to make it up somewhere down the road. That's going to happen. You're going to make a 25, 30, 35 footer that you didn't think you were going to make. And all of a sudden you made up for the shot that went errant somewhere else. And so I think really giving them the confidence that, you're here for a reason, and you're at this level of player for a reason, because you're pretty good at what you do. But don't let the consequences or any outside influences take away from the shot you're trying to hit now. This is the only one you have to do. And I always try to tell them, John Jacobs, I think, was the first one to really root this into me. The first thing he always says, what are you trying to do? Mm-hmm. Here's a shot. What are you trying to do with it? Whether it's off the tee, in the fairway, around the green. First of all, ask yourself, what are you trying to do? Then picture the shot that you want to hit. And he said, and the ultimate in that is, can you actually hit what you picture? So for many of the amateurs, they have to understand, it's not that I saw it on TV. Can I actually pull this off? And if you can't, then you need another picture. Okay, you just got to picture something else. And a lot of times that might be, I might be able to get it through that gap, but I'm probably better off pitching out in the fairway, because I know I can do that. I'm not sure I can get through these trees, and take an errant shot and turn it into a double or triple. So really, don't look at the consequences. Look at what's in front of you, one shot at a time. And, when you think about it, like I told this young guy the other day, he shot 68. I said, you only had 68 shots. You're out there for 4.5 hours. It's not a lot of work, is it? Yeah, no. So take your time. Yeah. I mean, just don't let the consequences deter you from what you're trying to do.
Well, and I always look at it this way too, is you can't change the past. You can't predict the future. All you have is now, the present. And so you have to, again, it's essentially what you're saying is you have to deal with the shot you have right now. Hopefully you can set yourself up for the next shot in a proficient way. But, and you can't look backwards and think, well, gosh, I didn't get a good tee shot here. This is what you're dealing with right now. What do I need to do? Let's assess the situation. What are my options here? And it goes back to what we've talked many times on the show before, is you have to look at it in, or at least I look at it in ways of percentage of success. So the higher the percentage of success on this particular shot, whatever it is I'm visualizing in my mind, then the likelihood I'm going to be able to pull that off. If I have a very low chances of success, a very low percentage, then I have to look at another option. So I want to look at whatever option, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 options, what's going to give me the highest percentage of success of executing that particular shot. That's the one that I'm going to go through. Don't try to go with some hero shot that you see, like you said, somebody on TV doing. I'm going to try that and see if I can do it. You want to do that in a practice round, or you want to have some fun sometime, that's fine. But when you're in a tournament or you're under pressure, that's not the time to be, planning on something, especially that you're not very proficient in. And that's what a lot of our amateur golfers end up doing. I want to get you, and this is, sort of bows into more of a hypothetical, but, Bryson DeChambeau, of course, had a few bad holes, as we know, on Sunday, that ultimately, I think, decreased his chances of winning the Masters. That goes without saying. But if you were his coach, what would your post-Masters conversation be? If you were dealing with Bryson, knowing what you know and what you've seen, I know you don't know him, maybe you do, but all the intricacies per se, but based on what you saw on Sunday, what would that conversation be like? Just give us a few, you don't have to get into all of it, but just a few points of discussion that you might have with him based on how he played on Sunday.
Oh, the first thing I'd tell him is you're a major champion.
Yeah.
And so the ability to play the game is not the issue. The issue is we have to go back and look at the situations during the last round where you didn't perform well and find out, is that mental, physical, or what's the situation that we put ourselves into? Did you outthink this shot? Did you just hit a bad shot, which we all do? That happens. Everybody hits bad shots. That's just going to happen. Or did you play a shot where, like on one of the par fives, I can get it past that bunker and get home in 2, and then you end up hitting the bunker. Was it something you could have done different? So I would go back through the spots that weren't as efficient and say, look, we just have to clean these up. But as far as your ability to play the game, that's not even a question. And especially with Bryson, as that engineering mind of his, I have a son that's a mechanical engineer, so I understand how he thinks. And thank God he got the math from his mother, because he didn't get that from me. But I can count to 5, and I don't like to make any higher scores, but that's another deal. But no, it's just understanding how they go about and how they process what they do. And he is so efficient in how he goes about everything that he does. So then I would go back to say, okay, let's look at your prep Sunday morning. Did you prepare enough for what you were going to be up against, understanding the situation, the pressure, and then compare that to when you won the Open? How did you go about that same thing? So let's look at these in comparative, but I don't want to have any negatives in there at all, because he can play. And so there's no doubt that he can play. And it just, it didn't work out. Things like that happen. But I would just make sure that he understands that, I've got his back. We're going to go to work. Let's go to work. Let's figure out why we did what we did, and let's make sure we don't do it again.
I think of, for instance, on number 11, where he put it in the pond, that's a very difficult hole to play, because you've got the pin cut up top on, favoring more of the left side. And I certainly don't believe he was going for it. I think it, whether it hooked or had too much draw or whatever, obviously I wasn't there, so I don't know what he did, but it looked like maybe he hooked that. And of course it ended up going in the water. Should he, or did he try to play it a little safer? Did he try to go for it? Again, as you said, you hit a couple of bad shots, and unfortunately Augusta National doesn't show any mercy on shots like that. So, and especially with the pressure of the Masters on it, we were touching on earlier in the previous question, you're under the gun, you're under pressure, he was leading there briefly on Sunday, and then he had a few bad shots, and it put him, back on his heels a little bit. But you're right. He's already major champion. He's an incredible ball striker. He has the mental fortitude to go on, but sometimes that, luck is in the cards, and he didn't have the lucky hand that day, and it just wasn't meant to be. And so for him to, to go back, or you as his coach, let's say, to go back and sort of, beat him up over those few bad shots doesn't make any sense, because again, what his abilities are. And this goes for really anybody. I think you have to be willing to be honest with yourself, no matter what level of player you are. And, we've talked about this many times too on Coach's Corner, where you have to be realistic with your expectations. So if you're a 25 handicap and you've got a shot, let's say where you've got to hit it over water, and it's a tricky shot even for better players, maybe you might have to look at laying up because you're not likely going to cover that water. You're wanting to go for the green. Unless you've got a lot of room and you can hit a decent shot, that might be different. But you might have to lay up, or you might have to play to the right or left, depending on where the water trouble comes in. And I think this is where the amateur players could really take a lesson from somebody like Bryson. You're going to have some bad shots, and you can't allow those to fester and grow and dictate how you play. So you have to put that behind you, and you have to know what your abilities are. You have to be honest with what your abilities really are. And as you pointed out earlier, whatever the deficiencies that might be in your game, you need to be able to look at it and say, okay, here's where I struggle. Here's areas that I'm pretty good at. So let's focus on the areas that I'm struggling with right now. That's what I want to work on with my coach. And that's what we're going to have the conversation next time we get together is here's a few areas I've noticed in the last 2 or 3 rounds I've played that I'm really lacking, and what can we do to tighten those up? And that's really what has to happen. And so I think what you're saying is spot on. I think, you have to focus on those things because, again, at his level, he's a solid enough player. You're not going to be reinventing the wheel with him. It's just a matter of, okay, you had a couple of bad holes or a couple of bad shots, and let's just keep going through the process and move on to the next event. But, so Pete, we're getting in, I guess, the time of year where, around the company, more and more golf courses are opening for business. We're officially in spring, and, people are getting excited. More and more people are getting out and beginning to start their season. I know we've talked about earlier on the year about some things to prep to get out. But now that they're out there, maybe they've got even a couple of rounds under their belt. What advice would you give them to give them the highest level or best chance of success to have a good season this year? What would you say to them at this point?
That's a great question. Well, it goes again without saying. I mean, don't neglect the short game. You're always going to have to practice it. You can't miss that. And it was always fun because one of the courses that I taught at for a long, long time, the putting green was right next to the first tee, and I saw so many people drive right past it and go right to the tee and 3-putt the first green. They don't even go to the putting green. I have no idea how fast the greens are, what's going on, what's happening. So don't neglect the short game. That's going to be something as you're starting off that can get you to score right off the bat. So make sure you're understanding. And then the other thing that I try to do with them early on is that make your practice and your prep have some purpose. Don't just go out and hit balls just to hit balls. Yeah. What are you trying to do? What are you working on here? If you're going to the range, lots of slow motion swings. Slow it down. Take practice swings. Take rehearsals. We have this large bucket of balls, I think, that has 125 balls in it. It takes me 3.5 hours to get through that thing. I take so many rehearsals, and I'm always trying to say, okay, where am I trying to go here? What am I trying to do? And I give that basket to one of my juniors, and 15 minutes later, he goes, hey, I'm out of balls. So what do you mean? You got 6 of them in the air at once. I mean, so what'd you get out of this? You got nothing out of it. So I would tell them at the beginning, make sure your short game is fundamentally solid. That's the first thing I'd have them do. And then secondly, as you start to play, as we just talked about before, if there's areas that are giving you troubles, let's look at those and let's concentrate on cleaning those up as we go, with that caveat of not neglecting the short game as we continue to practice. Hit a few putts, hit a few chips, hit some pitches. I always start every session off with them when they come to me, and I give them a wedge, and I said, I want you to hit 20, 30-yard pitch shots. And I said, first of all, we have to get this contact down. And I said, and ironically enough, when I play well, I don't have any of these. I hit all the greens. But I practice this a ton because I need to have it. And I said, you need to have it because you're going to have way more of these than I'm going to have. Yeah. So you need to be efficient at being able to pitch the ball 20 or 30 yards because you have so many of those shots around the green, and I might have one. Yeah, throughout the entire round because I'm going to hit it close enough to the greens. I don't ever have a pitch. I might have to chip one. I'm efficient enough over the years that I can hit, a lot of greens. But it doesn't mean that I don't practice them. I practice them all the time because you have to be efficient at every area of the game. So, and one area leads to another area. So if you get really efficient at putting, now your chipping gets easier, and if your chipping is better, your pitching gets easier, and then so on and so forth. So if the short game is sound, the rest of your game, it takes the pressure off it. But as you're starting off the year, keep track. What's giving you troubles? What's giving you fits? Let's make sure we address these before it's end of July, and you went out and struggled for 2-3 months.
Yeah, it's so important. This is where keeping stats is what you're getting at, all the time. Always keep your stats. And there's so many great, apps out there and
Sure.
Different products out there that let you do it electronically. So you don't even have to, jot it down like we used to have to. So there's really no excuse anymore. And there's many apps out there as well that you can coordinate with your coach and actually send them that information in real time. A lot of times it's just uploaded directly with your coach, so he or she can see what you're dealing with, what you're having struggles with. Same thing with your rounds; they can dissect your round a little bit, and the next time you get together, now you can have a conversation about some of the things, and you're not having to try to go from memory. So it's very important. And going to time, I just want to touch on time just for another second here. This is so important, going to what you were just talking about with practice. If you've only got 20 to 30 minutes once or twice a week, make use of that time. If you're going to go if all you've got is 20 to 30 minutes to go up to the practice tee and work on your game, I would rather you hit 20 golf balls than hit 100 golf balls, as you're pointing out, or 125 golf balls and just rapid fire and doing it. I would rather you take 20 or 25 golf balls and split it up in whatever areas you may be struggling with. And if that's all you work with, if just a small handful of balls, that's fine. Put it to useful practice, put it with purpose, of course, than just going out there and, as you said, beating balls for 30 minutes and think you're going to get better and really don't have a game plan. So if all you've got is 20, 30 minutes, work with your coach and get them to help you design a game based on the limited time that you may have, but that's going to give you the most opportunities to learn from and also ingrain some good habits that you can take out into the golf course. Because if you're just spending 20, 30 minutes, if that's all you've got once a week, twice a week, and you're just all over the place, then you're wasting your time. You're never going to become a better golfer. So when you go out in the golf course and you haven't really practiced the things you needed to focus on because you only had 20 minutes, you were too busy standing up there trying to knock out 30 drives, and now you've got 5 minutes left to go to the putting green or the chipping green or whatever, you've wasted that time. So right. I think, do you not agree? I mean, just
absolutely. 100%.
If you've only got 30 minutes, let's make good use of that 30 minutes.
Yeah, let's make use of it. Yeah, they definitely have to understand, the efficiency of that time and making sure that they spend, an equitable amount of time, getting down the things that are going to help them the most when they go to play.
Yeah, well said. Well, as always, it's hard to believe, but the time just flew by.
It flies by, doesn't it?
Yeah,
well, you and I can talk to a wrong number for half an hour, so we're good.
We can go, but no, I've got to. We got a couple of minute late start here, but I appreciate it always, Pete. Always bringing your best to the Coach's Corner. If you want to take a few moments, if there's anything that let the folks know if they want to reach out to you, the best way to do that. And if there's anything you want to plug, you got a couple of minutes to go ahead.
Well, thanks, Ted. It's always great to be on. So thanks for having me on. And it goes without saying, you do a great job with these, and we really appreciate the time that we get to spend with you. They can reach me at PeteBuchananGolf.com. All of my information is out there. I'm working on a couple of big projects. One is with IS Nation, which is a new all sports app. And so there's a link to that out there. And if you have, athletes, not only in golf, but, we have some families that one's a golfer, one's a wrestler, one's basketball. Every sport is covered out there. So if you want some great information, it would be something that I would check out. And then I just became a brand ambassador with XView, the 3D software, and we're looking at some great things coming down the road. And so you'll start to see some of those things popping up. And if you want your swing analyzed with something like that, get a hold of me, and we'll get a video in, and we'll put you through the 3D and really give you a good great view as to what's going on with your swing and get you down the road to make you a much better player.
That's right. If you can see it, then you can know what to changes need to be made as well. Pete, as always, thank you very much for coming on. I'm going to take a quick commercial break. And when I come back, I'm going to be joined by tonight's featured guest, Lisa O'Hurley, founder and CEO of LOHLA Sport. I'll be right back. Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Ted.
Improve your putting with the Alignment Ball Marker, a revolutionary new in-game putting alignment tool and ball marker. Its patented design allows you to read your putt and adjust your alignment at the same time by using your putter, which improves your accuracy and makes the process of putting faster. 100% legal according to the USGA, by their definition, permitted under the rules of golf. Winner of Best New Product at the PGA Show and only $9.99 on Amazon. And it's also completely customizable for any golf event or as a promotional giveaway. Order at alignmentballmark.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and I'm very, very excited tonight to bring on my special featured guest of the evening, Lisa O'Hurley. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then we're going to get into tonight's discussion. I'm excited to have her on. She's been a guest a number of times on the broadcast, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. But let me just tell you a little about her first. Her background is very impressive, includes being a former Golf Channel and Golfino executive. She's a lifelong love for golf clothing and an impeccable sense of style. She was also a star for 4 years at Baylor University golf team and has 4 handicap playing at a Sherwood Country Club in Thousand Oaks, California. And I'm going to say this hopefully right, Mayakama Golf Club in Sonoma, California. Please welcome my very special guest, the CEO and founder of LOHLA Sport, Lisa O'Hurley. Lisa,
thank you. So much about me. So great.
Well, you know, it's funny. This is the first time. Of course, we met at the PGA Show a couple of times. I didn't make it this year, unfortunately, but I've been lurking around your booth a couple times over the years, and so we got to meet there briefly. But as I was alluding to on the show, you know, this is the first year we've done now moved to a video format. Prior was just the audio, so we never really got a chance to do it in this sort of setting. So welcome to the new format. Hopefully keep our fingers crossed everything goes well. No glitches, no storms in the area or anything like that. But really, really excited to have you. And I appreciate you giving so much of your time coming on the broadcast. And I love having you on. And we're going to get you on, by the way. I'm going to get you on. I'll send you the link later. But to get you come on the other program I do, Women of Golf with Cindy and I, that you've done before as well. And we'll figure out what's good for your schedule and you come on that one as well. But so I want to get you, before we get into some of the specifics I know that you want to talk about, I want you to talk about LOHLA Sport. What was it about that you decided, or I guess what was going on that you decided this is something that I want to do? Obviously, I know you love fashion, you love golf, of course. You and your husband, John, play all the time. But what was it about fashion, I guess, and golf fashion particularly, that made you decide, okay, this is what I want to do?
Well, to be honest, Ted, I didn't give it as much thought, as people might think. It wasn't like I grew up thinking I was going to be be in fashion or own a clothing brand. I certainly didn't think that. I kind of did know that my life was destined to be in golf. I mean, I grew up in golf. My parents were both in the golf business. I started at the Golf Channel at day one. And then I kind of sidetracked into the apparel format when I discovered Golfino actually overseas playing in the Dunhill Links. Right. And I was so taken with it. And I was sort of a, self-described fashionista of my own accord in my own closet. So I got really excited when I saw that brand. And at the time I had left the Golf Channel, and, John and I had a son, and he was getting ready to go into kindergarten. And I thought, I'm ready to try something different, but not too different. I had to stay in golf. Right. So so I went and met with the couple that owned Golfino, and I started working their brand here in America in 2013. And it was really COVID, fortunately or unfortunately, that was the demise of Golfino. But at the same time, I had already built a business here. I had already built an apparel business. So I had a great sales team. We had excellent customers in the country clubs across the U.S. And it was time. And I had made great connections in terms of designer and manufacturers, and I was able to kind of connect dots and design our own thing that's definitely different than Golfino, but a lot of the same fabrics, a lot of the same great European fabrics, but definitely more U.S. driven and American looking. Sure. And I sort of had the idea during COVID when we were all sitting around, thinking of what next to do or what to do. Right. So this was the time I was able to mold LOHLA Sport, and we sent out our first collections in January of 2021. So we're at about a 4.5 year period now.
So when you look back now and you think about, and we'll talk about some of the lines, I'll let you talk about some of the different branding and that you've created over these last 4+ years. What was some of the inspiration? You talk about Golfino, of course, with some inspiration, the European brands, but obviously the American market is much different than Europe. I mean, if you look at many of the clothing lines there, what they wear and what we typically wear here are distinctly different in a lot of ways. Not everything, but there are certain things. So when you were sort of envisioning in your mind, how did you kind of take what you saw in the Golfino brand and sort of say, okay, I've got to, for lack of better words, Americanize it a little bit for this audience over here? How did you find that balancing act? Because there is a difference if you look at it. Yeah,
there certainly is. And I think the first thing we stuck with was the fabrics. That was the design was fabulous too, but in terms of a selling point of what Golfino was, the fabrics were so wonderful. And, the tops are buttery soft and the pants have a lot of stretch and, things that women want worldwide, wherever you live. Right. So, that was the first thing that we harnessed really was the fabrics and keeping those similar, if not exactly the same. And then, you're right. We did have to sort of upgrade the design to become more American. And, what that means to us is, it was a little bit more lady friendly in that it didn't have some craziness things that some of the European styles can have. Yeah. I promised initially, and this is a true story, I promised the buyers at the country clubs that there would be no faces, no eyes looking at you on the apparel. Right. So, we had some funny ones. We had some owls and we had some robots and we had some interesting things. So we took out the faces and, really created classic lean designs, clean cuts, a lot of color blocking. One thing that the designer Paul and I sort of got into was sort of color matching, trying to create colorways that look good on a wide variety of people, which is kind of hard to do, but you can do that if you combine 2 or 3 colors up near the face, because if one of those colors looks good on you, then that shirt will look good on you. So it's kind of a neat way to do it by using some interesting color blocking to make sure that that particular top would look good on a wide variety of people. But to be honest, where we really have killed it, lack of a better word, is with our pants. The Sofaletta fabric is fabulous from France, and our design seems to really resonate with a lot of women. So much so that we carry core colors, and then we continue to make fashion colors of the very pant, and we now have the very long pant for women who are 5'11" and over, which there are quite a few, believe it or not, and lovely long-legged ladies. So the very pant has really been our core piece that has driven the company. A lot of times now we're at this point in this 4.5 year period where there are people who have known us since day one. And then there are people still in areas where were not really covered that well, who are still getting to know the brand. But now it's, oh, you guys make the very pant. So that's sort of our moniker, so to speak, is how a lot of people know us, is from how great our pants are.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you in sort of concert with that is, it's not just the look of the fashion, but the feel as well. Women have to, women obviously like the visual appeal of what you're putting together, but it also has to be comfortable. They have to be comfortable. They have to feel, particularly they have to feel comfortable. And I don't mean just on, in addition to how it fits, but they have to feel comfortable wearing it. As you pointed out a second ago, you had to take the eyes off and, do that so they didn't feel, self-conscious about it. So how did you sort of balance that out as well? Because that's a big one for women.
And, the fabrics do the talking, but we wanted to make styles that literally you could wear from when you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed. Mm-hmm. And I think that we've done that. We've got a lot of these really great tight core collections that are interchangeable. You can mix and match to create a lot of different outfits within them. And what's really nice about that is that you can, based on the weather and your preference of the day, you can kind of choose an outfit. And whether you're playing golf or not, this, you're going to be comfortable and look put together all day long. And, we've really gotten a little bit too into more travel wear, showcasing how we can mix and match outfits where, you can literally pack 8 styles and get 12, 13 outfits out of it, which is kind of cool, just by the mixing and matching and stay comfortable the whole time. So, the fabrics are really built for comfort, and then we tailor the designs so that you will look appropriate from morning to night.
Yeah, because, I know, not just in golf, but outside of golf, a lot of women, when they're looking at, whatever fashion that they're, of the day, is they want to know that it's going to sort of hug them in the right places and be flattering, of course, but they don't want it so that it's, tight here or loose here, that it's not going to be, form fitting to some degree. And some want a little bit more flexibility too. And you guys, what's really kind of interesting is you guys have sort of ushered in what you refer to as the golf leisure market, which is really, really nice. I know you touched on that, something similar like Lululemon and whatnot, and the sort of the athleisure, if you will. What's behind that?
Well, we started initially, I think it was our second season, we made our first, what I would call a tracksuit. I mean, for lack of a better word, it's a jacket and pull-on pants that match. And those kind of took off. And to be honest, I have to think to not wear one every day, because I obviously have every one that we've ever made, right? But they are so comfortable and put together, and those truly are what I travel in when I'm going on an airplane. Is I wear one of our tracksuits. Like right now, we have the runaround jacket and the runaround pants, and those coordinate to each other to match. We have the fall jacket and the golf fitness pull-on pant. That also goes as a set. We've now added a different jacket that can go with those pants, which is the luxury chevron jacket. And, these sets are really good looking. They're fashionable, yet truly you can go do yoga in them. I can go to the gym in it. I could wear it to work and not miss a beat and go to Equinox. So it's kind of nice. And what I really like about the pants that we're doing that are in these tracksuits, or the golf fitness pull-on pant, which is my favorite pant that we make, to be honest. It's a pull-on pant, but it has back pockets to make it country club appropriate. But what I like about them too is that we don't shorten them. So in other words, it's not like a yoga pant where you're going to see half of your calf hanging out. So they actually go all the way to your ankle, which I like because it does make them look much more put together. And even though I haven't bought them yet, my plan though is to buy some of Sneaks. I don't know if you've heard of this, but the woman who made Spanx is now making these like athletic looking high heels. I'm going to buy these and I'm going to wear them with our tracksuits. That way I can really I can cocktail party, I think, even in my tracksuit. Yeah.
Yeah. Spice them up a little bit. What, I guess, Lisa, what's really interesting to me when, I hear you talk about LOHLA Sport is obviously you're very, very passionate about what you do. And I think obviously that has to be important no matter what your business is. And now that you've been doing this for a little while, when you first started things out, you kind of have to go, and I say by the seat of your pants, because you don't really know how it's going to be received. I mean, you've got great, people around you and helping you and things like that. And you're pulling great fabrics and that from Europe and that sort of thing, designs, but you don't really know what's going to happen until customers start getting it in their hands. So tell us a little bit about, obviously it's done very well and very, very successful, but what have you learned in more recent years, or say the last year, that you didn't know in year one? So what's been some of the feedback? What's been some of the direction that you've sort of gotten from your customers when they say to you, okay, wow, I really like this, the very pant, as you mentioned earlier, and other things that you carry in the line. What is, I guess, what's their direction they're leading you to now that they have a better understanding of what it is you're offering to them?
Right. Well, as I say, I did know the pants would be popular. I didn't realize how popular they would be. So that's certainly going to stay a focus of ours for
Sure.
the next few years, is these pants. And people are asking for colors that we had 2-3 years ago, and they want to see them come back. And so we might do a little bit of a cycle, so that the people who knew us 3 years ago aren't necessarily everybody who knows us now. So, some people are upset that they missed that part. So, we will recycle some colors. Our shorts, we took the pant and we cut them off and made a short. Those have been really popular. And, what I'm learning is that not a lot of companies make shorts. And so our shorts have really been popular, especially for golfers who walk. I've noticed that they like a short often versus a skirt. We did change recently, just this season, the inside lining of our skirts. So we got some feedback that our customers wanted to see a different fabric for the shorts that go underneath. So we changed all of that. That's kind of a big deal to do, to fully revamp. So we did that this season. So that was good, and we're getting really good feedback on that. And one thing I kind of heard at the PGA show, speaking of PGA show, is that our customers are liking that we're staying true to golf clothing too, that everything that we make, you can play golf in.
Right.
Whereas, some of the other brands might be becoming more lifestyle-ish, which I think is great, because you can wear it all over. But not necessarily can you play golf in everything that they make. So we are trying to make sure that we do that every single thing that we make, that we, I do the swing test, that's me. Right. But, and Paul, our designer, is certainly looking at the fabrics and the stretch and all of that. But I want to make sure that you can still play golf in everything that we make.
Yeah, because that's a great point. And you're exactly right. I've seen a lot of many of the other lines, and there's nothing wrong with getting into other markets and that. But I think sometimes when you do that, you run the risk of getting too far away from your core market. And I know obviously every business wants to grow and wants to expand in that. But sometimes when you find a niche that works really well for you, sometimes if you stay in that lane, it's going to bode better for you down the road. Tell us about the Luxe Getaways collection that's now available.
Oh yeah, so
that is become super popular. Tell us about that and why you think it's gotten so popular.
So that's our new spring line. So we have an overlying theme for each season, and for this spring it's Luxe Getaways. So we've already released Raffles, which actually I'm wearing now. It has a little bit of like a Tiffany blue to it. I don't know how well you can see that, but Raffles is based on basically Singapore. So the Raffles Hotel in Singapore, and it has an Asian influence to it, which is it has this awesome print called the Zen print. Which people are really, really gravitating toward. Plus, we've incorporated this sort of Tiffany blue color, and people just really, there's not a woman that doesn't love that color. So, it's like Pavlov's dog. You see Tiffany blue, you start to salivate. So, so Raffles has really taken off. And then we followed it up with a staycation for Los Angeles with a collection called Shutters, which is based off of Santa Monica, California. And I tell you what, when we made this collection, we had no idea that the fires were going to happen. And now it just means so much to us personally, being able to showcase the Shutters collection, because it is an homage to Santa Monica, which was, is borderline to Pacific Palisades for people who don't know, the geography of Los Angeles. But the Shutters collection is bright and fun loving, and it has, the beautiful blue of the ocean, and tulip pink, which is the pink in the flowers, that you see all across Santa Monica. And it also has the promenade skirt and the promenade top, which is sort of, our little cute shopping area in Santa Monica. So that collection is really hitting home even more than I would think, because of, what we've gone through here in Los Angeles.
Right.
And then we're following that up with two collections that are a little bit more dressy. So we've just released Ritz, which features a really cool snakeskin print. And there's few prints are better than animal prints. So, animal prints just seem to really wow. So this particular Ritz collection, and it's in a cool color that's seemingly popular right now, that we're calling it pink champagne, but it's got kind of a pinky melon color almost to it. And then we're about to release, like maybe in 3 weeks, a collection called Savoy, which is a beautiful black and white and khaki, like super elegant looking collection. And then we follow up with Plaza, which is definitely a New York theme in red, white, and blue, and stars and stripes, and everything that you would want for 4th of July. So that's sort of our Luxe Getaways, the 5-tiered prong. Yeah.
Wow. And, you always manage to come out with something different every season. And, that's, again, what I was sort of alluding to earlier is, you're getting a lot of feedback now that you've been around for a few years in the market. You're starting to get some back and forth with your customers saying, we really like this, or, we would love to see something like that. So it gives you, now that you've got a few years under your belt, you're able to now pull from that feedback and say, okay, this is a direction that we want to continue in. This is one that it was okay, but it's not as popular. It's not as desirable. So let's try something different that we think is going to really, and obviously that's what you've done here. I know you've mentioned this before, but for those that maybe haven't tuned into the show, except for the first time now, is you obviously are working with Annika Sorenstam.
Yes.
Who everybody knows Annika from her time on the LPGA, and obviously since then. Tell us what how that relationship came about and what you guys are working on together.
Oh, we got a lot going on. In fact, I talked to her yesterday. Well, nobody's a bigger fan of Annika than I am, and both from her professional and for her personal life. The fact that she's won 90 times,
I know.
When we have this great golf tournament that we have called the LOHLA Sport Tournament of Club Champions, and Annika comes in and we do a great fireside chat. And the women, the way that they react to her and her stories, and there's laughter and tears and, everything in between. But she has just got she's got such great background in golf and such humility of the way she learned and growing up in Sweden, and, how, she, and to be honest, she's an old school learner. She's not the one out there with, the computer and the technology. She's a feel learner. And it's been really fun to watch her up close and to play with her a couple times. That's, pinch me. But it's been really fun. And professionally, we got, we were already friends, which helped certainly. And she was sort of exiting her time at Cutter and Buck, and LOHLA Sport was kind of just sort of taking off. And as a friend, she came up to me and said, I think it's looking great, and I'm so proud of you. And I'm, I love how it looks, and your website looks great. The clothes look great. And, so then when the time came, I asked Mike, her husband, who's also her manager, I said, I just really want to be in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize that our brand is brand new and she's got a lot of people wanting her.
Yeah.
But, long story short, she really liked the clothes. And one of the things that she said is, when I wear LOHLA Sport, I don't feel like I have a glove hanging out of my back pocket.
Right.
Like she didn't feel so golfy.
Right.
So, which I loved that because, her life now is not, it is golfy,
right.
but not so golfy. She's got a lot going on.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, she and I are partnering in June. We've got a really big deal coming up. We are LOHLA Sport and Annika are both partnering with Regent Seven Seas Cruises, and we're doing their first ever golf cruise. And Annika will be there. LOHLA Sport will have a pop-up shop on board. We'll do a fashion show. We've got a tournament planned. We've got 7 different bucket list golf locations that we're cruising to, and you have the opportunity to play 1 or all 7 or 2, 3, 4, 6, whatever it is. But we're really looking forward to that. And I think that will be something that we will be doing for quite a while because it's really, it seems to work well for all parties. And so we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah. And she's really has become over the years a great ambassador for golf. And not just women's golf either. No. She has been an ambassador for golf in general. For those of us that really enjoyed watching her, it was kind of sad when she sort of hung up the clubs, figuratively speaking, professionally, because, she was a lot of fun to watch and very, some people might look at it and say, well, she was a very serious player on the golf course, but, so was Nicholas. But, you have to be if you want to win 90 tournaments. It's not like, and I don't mean disrespectfully when I say, Freddie Couples, but, it's just not in her DNA to be that way. And, she just is great. So it was kind of sad to see her go, but I know at the same time, I know that she's had a foot in it in other avenues in golf. And it's great to see her partner with you in this with LOHLA Sport because it is a great brand that you have, and she brings a lot to it as well. And I can imagine you guys have a lot of fun. So,
and she's got a really good business mind too.
Oh yeah,
she enjoys it. She enjoys every facet of it. She's always asking me questions, asking me about this and that. She has comments, of course, on the clothes, and she and I really enjoy each other. And Ted, I was going to tell you too. I had the distinct pleasure of she took me to Pine Valley this year.
Oh wow!
So she's one of the very few women members at Pine Valley, and so I don't know if you've had the privilege to play Pine Valley, but it's pretty cool. And one of the cool parts is just the atmosphere. So you stay there on campus, everybody eats in the same place, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so when we got there and we went to our first dinner, and Annika walks in. Every man sitting in that room came up to her to say they were so happy she was a member, to tell her how wonderful she was, how much they've loved watching her over the years. You walk around with her, it's pretty impressive the way that people react to her. It's really cool.
Well, she's always been very professional, both on and off the golf course. And, I think, again, she's been a great ambassador for the game. And, I know as I said, she still keeps busy doing so many other things. And I know she plays competitive in other ways, but, not obviously in the tour like she did. And, there's been whispers, you hear people saying, well, maybe she's going to come back and that. I don't think so. I think she's got too many other things going on. But, would it be nice once in a while, maybe, her do something very similar to what they do at the beginning of the Masters, where they have some of the legends of golf tee off. And, maybe that's something that she could do. But, I think she's just having a great time. She's married, has a family, and just doing the things that she likes to do. What's the most challenging part of what you do? What do you find? Obviously you have a lot of love and a lot of I know there's a lot. That's a big trait to unpack. But seriously, what was sort of the most challenging when you were getting things going? And when you look at it today, and I don't mean necessarily the hardest, but what's the most challenging, but at the same time, the most rewarding part of what you do?
Well, I don't know if those are the same. Most challenging is manufacturing, for sure.
Right, of course.
It's, it's something that I've had to learn. I didn't really know the nuts and bolts to it. And, I would say this would be a great business if you didn't have to make anything. But manufacturing is rough. And I can see why the manufacturers who do it well are so sought after, because it's a very and you have to have a lot of trust. You have to have a lot of trust in people who are making your product. So that's probably the hardest, is just, and the timing, getting it all right, getting the fabrics, getting the zippers, getting the buttons, getting all of it together. Right. That's difficult. So that's probably the hardest. Now, what has been the most rewarding? Oh my gosh, it's the customer reaction for sure.
Yeah.
And what's super exciting, Ted, is, little things like, I have an 18-year-old son, and he was traveling recently, and he was on an airplane, and a lady came on in a full LOHLA Sport outfit, and he was dying. He was so excited. But it's things like that when you see it out and around, and you think, oh my gosh, something that I did is causing that woman to wear that. It's pretty cool.
And he recognized it too. That was the beauty of it too. Yeah. It's like, I know that.
Well, he as a son, he has to do some warehouse work. So he knows it as well as I do. But so that's really cool. And it's cool to get, remarks on social media, or just even to our email about ladies liking this or that, or when they send pictures of them and their girlfriends playing in a member guest and they're all wearing it. That really, that really tugs at your heartstrings for sure.
Oh yeah. Now I know you and John, your husband, play a lot of golf together. You do a lot of charity work together. And what is, I think, the most fun that you guys have out on the golf course together? Because that's as a couple, obviously you have lots of fun and lots of friends, and you do all kinds of things in other areas. But when you're out in the golf course, because I know he loves golf probably as much, maybe, who knows, maybe even more than you do. But what's fun for you when you and he are teeing it up?
Well, we do like to play together.
Right.
So we really enjoy that. Any tournaments where he and I can pair up, or even, as you say, we do a lot of charity events, right. Some celebrity charity events, and those things where we can play together is always really fun, because he is super supportive on and off the golf course, but especially on the golf course. I will say now, we have been doing a lot of charity work with golf, and it's super rewarding. It is, the golf is one thing, but it's the getting the people together, the organization of it, the auctions, the ways that you can raise money for various charities. It really makes you feel good when, you've worked for 6 months on something, you have the event, and you're able to, give a few $100,000 to a charity that means the world to them. That's really, really cool. And John and I have a couple that, are very close to us as a couple, right, and as a family. And so that's been, it's really cool that your favorite hobby can also, be a great fundraiser for, a variety of needs. So we're really enjoying that. And our son is, he was really into golf from ages 3 to 5, and then he gave it up. Now he's circling back at age 18. And in fact, we just went out and played this weekend. And so getting to do that together is also super special. If he can beat us on one hole, he's happy. So, that's pretty fun.
What was it about golf that appealed to you years ago, before you started LOHLA Sport, before you got into anything else? What was it about the game because everybody has a different story. For me, as an example, my father taught me when I was very, very young. And, as much as I would have loved to have been able to battle it with somebody like Nicholas or, that generation, because that was, and showing my age now, I didn't have that caliber of a game to be able to do that. So I got into the teaching side of things and other areas in golf. But, you have a story, I would imagine, of how you got introduced to golf and why it sort of, how it sort of took root. So tell us a little bit about that. How did you first get into golf, and why has it become such an intricate part of your life?
Well, I grew up in country clubs. My dad was a country club manager my whole life. He was a GM. And my mom was either a membership director or merchandise buyer, kind of depended. So I kind of grew up around it, but I didn't really get into it until I was, I don't know, maybe 12 or 13. I was kind of looking for a sport. I actually started with tennis, but I'm an only child. And so I was out there banging tennis balls against a garage door. I got to find a new sport. So it was then that we were living in Houston, actually, and my dad, the club that my dad was a GM at, one of the, he wasn't even an assistant pro. I didn't even know what he was doing, was Billy Ray Brown, who's now a golf commentator. Anyway, he worked for my dad loosely. He worked for, I don't even know what he was doing, to be honest. He was maybe an assistant to an assistant. But he gave me golf lessons. And it was before my freshman year in high school. And to be honest, I still use the exact same putting grip that Billy Ray Brown taught me when I was 14. But I was going into a high school in Texas where the girls' team was the top team in the state. And I thought, well, that sounds kind of fun. So I made that team and, played a lot there. And then we moved to Arizona, and then I played on the national best girls golf team. So in 2.5 years, I was a one handicap. Like I really got into it. So, I kind of went from 0 to 80. I was just playing it every day. And at that point, it was pretty obvious, like how great it was and the doors it could open for you and all the people you would meet. And, here I was, age 16, 17 years old, playing with Charles Barkley in Phoenix and, taking money from him. Although he would probably deny that. But
yeah.
Anyway, so I had a really great time. And then, and I had no design to go pro and never did. Still never did. But I did play in college at Baylor, and they had just really started their team, so it wasn't super competitive. But they're really competitive now. I could never make that team now. But it was great that I could just keep it going. And then I went into the Golf Channel, and so I've just it's been a linear thing that has taken me through my entire life. And to be honest, I don't know where I would be without it. I really don't know. And no offense, but I look at some of my friends who don't have something like that they've taken from their childhood into their adulthood. And I feel kind of bad because you can tell that there's a loss, that they're sort of searching for something similar. And I don't know that there is anything similar to golf, that opens these doors and where you meet these wonderful people and travel to these great places. And, so
exactly.
It's hard to quantify it really in the outside world if you're not in golf. But I've been so lucky that it's been a thing that has gone through my whole life, and aren't we all lucky that it's something that we can play, as we age? Because
that's the big one for me. As I get older, and you don't have the same, because you mentioned tennis a few moments ago, and when you get older, I'm not saying that people don't, but tennis is very high impact on particularly your legs and knees and things like that. And I'm not saying that golf doesn't offer some issues as well, but it's not the same. I know people that are in their 90s, live down in the villages in Florida that are out there. They might only play 9 holes. Some of them only play 6 holes, but they're out there every other day, or some cases even every day. And it's great. But and it's a great social thing. And I think what it does, it humbles even the best athletes in the world. There's athletes that have come from some of the toughest sports out there, whether it be baseball, football, hockey, you name it. And they get out in the golf course and they're whiffing it around and they're thinking, I can't believe this. I just scored a touchdown, last week and, threw this and did that and ran through, and tackled so-and-so. And I can't even hit this ball down the middle of the fairway. So it becomes a challenge. And I think, you would probably agree with this as well. It's even when you're not playing your best, it takes but one good shot to say, you know what, I'm coming back tomorrow.
Yeah, that felt great.
You know what I mean? And people that don't get it, you know, my sister, unfortunately, no longer with us, but, you know, she hated it. Could not understand. I would watch the Masters. I don't get it. And I said, you need to go out and you need to try it. And she, up until the point that she left us, she played it all the time. She loved it.
Did she?
And yeah, as soon as she got bit by the bug, that was it. She'd come walking in with new clubs, new outfits, shoes, you know, you name it, she had it. And I almost died, almost fainted on the floor when she walked through the door. I wish she was still around now. I'd introduce you and get her to buy some of your things. But you know, it just goes to show you that even, you know, that some people that don't have an understanding of the game, just really what it does, it's more than just chasing a little ball around 18 holes. It's I don't even want to say it's a culture. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's just, there's something about the game that brings the challenge in you out and brings the competitiveness out, but at the same time allows you the ability to laugh at yourself when you're not playing your best, because you think, I can't believe I played that rotten hole the way I did. And we saw that in the Masters. You know, poor Bryson had some struggles out there in the Masters. But then
it happens to everybody.
Right. It happens to everybody. So, yeah, it's interesting. What's happening with LOHLA moving forward? What are we seeing coming out later in the season? I know you mentioned a couple things. What's your vision as you move forward and get ready? Believe it or not, I know we're to start in 2025, but you're already looking forward, I guarantee it, to 26 and maybe even 27. So what are some things that you can share with us that you're looking forward to and that might be coming out in the next little while?
Well, you know, we are we're still growing, Ted. I mean, we geographically speaking, we still have not covered the entire U.S. We do have sales reps out there in you know, key hot pockets, but there's a lot of the U.S. that we're still not carried in. So our sales team and me, and you know, we're all working on that, just getting into more and more country clubs. That's the best place for us, where most women can find us. And the country clubs that we are in it's been so wonderful, and we have such great partners there. So we'll be growing that way. We are blossoming overseas all of a sudden into Ireland this season. So we've got a couple of clubs that are excited to have us there, which we're equally excited about. And so I think that international growth is definitely on the forecast, probably within the next 2-year period, as you're saying. And then, you know, in terms of our styles, we're trying something new with our collections a little bit going forward. We've been doing 5 collections per season. We're actually going down to 4, but making them a little bit wider. And I think that is going to be really good for the mix and match ability, because there will be a few more pieces in there that you can throw in. And so we've got that going design-wise. We've got a few new fabrics this season. We've got a new sun protection fabric that we've come out with for shirts. And so we're definitely experimenting there. We've got some cool Pima cotton coming from Peru later this summer. So, you know, we're going to be expanding a little bit in terms of fabrics and styles. But of course, you can play golf and everything still. I promise. But yeah, no, I mean, we've definitely, you know, we're kind of just now hitting an area where people are starting to know us. We don't have to explain who we are every time. And, you know, now we can really get some momentum, I think, in terms of growth.
Well, it's like any business. I mean, it takes a while to get out there into the market. But, you know, when you have certain products that really stick in people's minds, like you talked about earlier, the Very pants, you know, that's something that's your sort of your anchor, if you will. And people remember that, and then they start to come back and say, oh, what else do they have? You know, when they find something, and this is the one thing, and you know, that I think differs from men. You know, men will just sort of go out and, you know, get whatever. Women, when they find something that they really, really like, they will stick it, and they're very loyal.
Yes.
And so, when they see that you've got a specific, product or part of your line that they really, really like, that'll be their anchor. And then they'll look around to see what else you have, but they're going to come back every season, update, upgrade, whatever is available. They're going to stick with that. And, that's why I was saying earlier to you, I think sometimes when brands start to get too far away into other areas or other lanes and sort of move away too much from their core constituents, it can cause problems. And it sounds like you've got things very, very well anchored. And that doesn't mean you're not adding new things to the line, but you're staying, as you said, you want to make sure that everything's sort of golf related. Doesn't mean they can't wear that outfit somewhere else or they couldn't mix and match and do other things, but it's essentially every piece is something that they can wear when they play golf. And that's something that, is important to the people that really look forward to your brand. So kudos to you and your team. Any last thoughts that you want to share? And then we'll give them the website and let them go and check it out. So what any final thoughts that you want to share?
Well, spring golf is coming. And even in Los Angeles, it's cold here right now, but I know it's around the corner. So we've got a lot of new great collections for spring. Fall is following just around the corner too, starting in July. So, please, if you haven't checked us out, please do. Our website is is a great place to find us. Which is LOHLAsport.com. And there is an H in that, LOHLAsport.com. And then, and if your country club doesn't have it, then please ask. That's the best way to get into these country clubs, is just to have, a couple of members asking for it here and there. And that certainly helps us out a lot. And then, we also look forward, Ted, to maybe, as I say, we've got this sort of partnership with Regent Cruise Lines coming up. We're looking for other fun ways and other fun companies to partner with, to expand the brand, but also, to meet new people.
Yeah, I think it's important for that, and I think you've done a fantastic job, and I think you're going to continue to grow and expand, and you've already made some great partnerships, not just with the country clubs that you're already invested in now, but obviously a great partner in Annika. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better, relationship there, of course, both on a personal and obviously on a business level as well. So you're definitely on a great track. So I just want to say, everybody go to LOHLAsport.com, and it's LOHLAsport.com. All of the great stuff that we've been talking about and more is available there. And if you want to reach out to Lisa and maybe you have some questions or whatnot, her information, I'm sure, is there available as well. But Lisa, thank you very, very much for joining me. It's always a pleasure, and it's great to have kind of a face-to-face for a different.
I know. I like your new format.
Well, it's still a work in progress. I'm working on it, but it's getting there. But I want to thank you very much for spending time with me, and much continued success. And I'm going to have you, obviously, as I said earlier, to come on the other program, our women's program, and we'll tee that up. But hang tight for a second. I'm going to wrap up here, and then we'll call it a night. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. And again, a special thanks to my featured guest tonight, Lisa O'Hurley from LOHLA Sport, the CEO and founder. And then also a very special thanks to my earlier guest, Pete Buchanan, joining me on the Coach's Corner panel. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every week. God bless and have a great week. We'll see you next time on Golf Talk Live. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. We'd like to thank this week's Coach's Corner panel, and a special thank you to tonight's guest. Remember to join Ted every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Golf Talk Live. And be sure to follow Ted on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in being a guest on Golf Talk Live, send Ted an email at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.